Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. We just had another double-header Bad Batch banker. Spoiler alert. And you know what? Pretty much what we expected to happen to the clone named Emerie Carr happened. We first see Emerie Carr in the second season of the Bad Batch, when the clones face down a rogue Zillo Beast, a monster that originated on Malastare and was thought to have been wiped out a long time ago. You see, during the Clone Wars, the dropping of a prototype EMP weapon caused one of these massive beasts to awaken. The Republic would spend a considerable amount of resources capturing the deadly creature, and this beast would grow from infancy to adulthood at an alarming and unnatural rate, simply by consuming more meat. And once it grew to a large enough size, it was pretty much impervious to all types of conventional weapons. It was basically invincible. Now, Chancellor Palpatine had the Zillo Beast brought back to Coruscant for studying, but it broke containment and rampaged through the city. The Zillo Beast was eventually killed by chemical weapons, but now it seems like Palpatine had preserved the specimen all along and had it cloned, a task that would be handled by one Dr. Hemlock, Chief Scientist of the Empire's Advanced Science Division. He also happens to be Emerie Carr's supervisor. Now, if you aren't really paying close attention, Emerie Carr just seems like any other scientist at this facility. We don't actually know she's a clone until much later on. But looking back now at her behavior, we can surmise a few things. When Dr. Hemlock arrives on Mount Tantiss, Emerie Carr is actually the first individual off of this ship. She doesn't give off the vibe that she's leading the small party. Instead, it's almost like she's a pet to Royce Hemlock, allowed to walk before him to clear the way. Maybe pet's not the right word, but this is just not the type of behavior someone like Royce Hemlock would tolerate from anyone else. It shows us that he trusts Emerie to a certain degree that he might not with others. And no, this isn't nitpicking, guys. This is the Empire, and protocol is everything. Authoritarians, well, their greatest fear is not being able to control everything around them. Now, when Dr. Hemlock approaches Dr. Skalder and begins giving her instruction, look at how Emerie stands. She's not behind Hemlock like underling would be or should be. Instead, she's slightly in front and places her in between Skalder and the doctor so that she could see both of their faces when they're talking. She reminds me of like a gifted, high-functioning child with maybe less social graces who wants to be involved in every grown-up conversation. She wants to absorb as much information as possible here. And right as Hemlock finishes talking to Skalder, Emerie jumps in and finishes his sentence.
And see to the transfer of the assets.
Have the cargo taken below.
Emerie is clearly very confident in herself, and she also seems to be very passionate about her job. She seems to be willing to go above and beyond what's expected of her. And Dr. Hemlock understands this, and he's smart enough to recognize that her loyalty can be guaranteed as long as he's kind to her. And by kind, I mean just, not giving Emerie any reason to hate him, and basically giving her an opportunity to work, which is what she really wants. Remember, she's a female Fett clone, and we have no idea what their purpose is just yet. We're not even sure if there's any more than Omega and Emerie. They might be the only ones. But basically, these individuals had no mothers or dads. They were very vulnerable, especially at a young age when all humans need a lot of attention and nurturing. And like her clone brothers, she's basically property, and so she is assigned a job in a professional life rather than allowed to choose one for herself. And again, Emerie throws herself at her job with the same passion that clone troopers show for warfare. Remember, unlike the rest of us, Emerie grew up in a pretty isolated situation. She didn't have many opportunities or paths in her life. The fact that anyone gave her a chance to do anything would have been a huge deal for her. The fact that the chief scientist of the Empire's Advanced Science Division chose her personally as an assistant would have been a massive deal.
How come I never saw you on Camino?
Because I was sent elsewhere. Until Dr. Hemlock took me under his wing. He saw potential in me. Like Nala Say sees in you.
Dr. Hemlock was smart to have taken Emerie Carr. An intelligent leader understands that they must surround themselves with individuals that they can trust and also mold into extensions of themselves. Dr. Hemlock, being a very ambitious individual, probably recognized that trait in a lot of the other people who worked for the Empire.
And now, additional funds have been diverted at your request?
That is correct. It is for a project that is of personal interest to the Emperor.
Which is what?
I'm afraid that's classified.
And because clones really didn't have that much personal ambition, having a clone work for him was the perfect situation. Emerie Carr, like most clones, is not driven by personal ego. That would make them terrible soldiers. Instead, she is driven by an overwhelming desire to do her duty, which makes her an excellent soldier. And so she would tackle scientific experiments with the same tenacity that Captain Rex would tackle a fortified enemy position. But for Dr. Hemlock to get Emerie Carr on the same page as him, he has to basically teach her his own value system. Value systems are important. They can help someone self-motivate and find deeper purpose in what they're doing, especially when things get challenging or difficult. Emerie Carr probably had her own value system before meeting Dr. Hemlock, something she learned, growing up around the other clones on Kamino. But Hemlock is a pretty powerful and therefore persuasive individual. And he has to be because his views are quite extreme. He believes the pursuit of science should not be impeded by ethical considerations or personal values. He believes that emotions need to be completely removed from a scientific setting.
What is your name?
Dr. Carr, limit your personal interactions with the specimens. They are scientific assets, nothing more.
Of course, Doctor.
He's basically a sociopath, but he hides this flaw behind his scientific achievements. And up until now, it seems like Emerie Carr has been unbothered with the projects she's been working with alongside him, including the Zillo Beast clone. She's basically thoroughly conditioned and adapted to Dr. Hemlock's worldview, or at least view on science. But then something happened. When the Imperial Defense Recruitment Bill was passed, putting an end to the clone army, it might not have initially affected Emerie Carr, but indirectly, clones started arriving at the Mount Tantiss facilities for experimentation. These clones, like Crosshair, would be locked up for most of the day and then occasionally go through procedures. Now, I'm sure Emerie Carr was told that, Crosshair was a very dangerous individual and a traitor.
Who are you?
Remain calm. Cooperate, and you might survive.
Emerie is more or less neutral here. She's just being professional. She isn't enjoying tormenting Crosshair, nor is she trying to help him escape. She's just doing a job, completely detached emotionally from what's happening to this clone, strapped down on a table, because science. But I think she is a little bit worried. I mean, the clone troopers were seen as invaluable, indispensable for the security of the galaxy. The fact that they could be just removed like that's got her thinking, because she also is a clone. Things begin to change when Emerie encounters Omega after she is captured. Not only is Omega a clone, but she's a female, just like her. Emerie Carr makes a concerted effort to connect with Omega. She wants to make Omega feel more at home here at this facility and more comfortable around her so that she could do her job more easily.
Ironic. You trust the Kaminoan, but not me.
I don't know you.
No? You might know me better than you think. We're sisters, Omega.
The ironic thing here is that Emerie Carr believes that she's manipulating this girl, when in fact it's actually the other way around. You see, Omega is a dangerous empath. Omega understands that Emerie Carr has allowed this piece of information to slip because she's trying to make Omega cooperate with her. Omega also understands that Emerie Carr most likely brought up this piece of information because it does mean something to her. And so what does Omega do? Well, she turns this emotional connection right back at her.
Dr. Hemlock took me under his wing. He saw potential in me. Like Nala Say sees in you.
I never knew that I had a sister. It's nice not being alone.
Omega might look like a child compared to Emerie, but I'm almost certain that Emerie probably has sped up aging as well, like the rest of the clones. And so Omega and Emerie might be the same age. And this little connection that Omega makes with Emerie bears fruit. I mean, later on when Emerie catches Omega with a tiny straw version of Wrecker's Tukadal, at first he just reprimands her.
We've been over this before, Omega. Personal items are forbidden. I'll dispose of it.
Don't! Please, Emerie.
It is for your own good.
Omega would then go on to break the rules further by developing a relationship with one of the hounds in the kennel on Mount Tantiss. When she's caught, her privileges would be taken away further, and it's at this point when little Omega is at her lowest that Emerie decides to show her some compassion and brings her Tukadal back to her. Emerie might not feel like this is a big deal. It was a stupid rule anyway, right? This facility was never designed to accommodate children. She understands why someone like Crosshair shouldn't have personal items because he's a dangerous assassin, but Omega's a child. That's something that Emerie can emphasize with, understand. And as a logical person, she sees no harm in giving the doll to her. It's a dumb rule, but here's the thing. A lot of the rules in the Empire are pretty dumb. Emerie has just tried out a new behavior, disobedience, and she doesn't get punished or caught. Whether she consciously realizes it or not, she's opened up a gateway, a new neural pathway of possibilities. Now, when Omega escapes across her, Emerie does try to stop them, but she also says this.
It's not too late. Come with me, and no one needs to know about this.
I mean, the two killed a droid, caused a bunch of chaos in front of the security cameras, fought a bunch of TK stormtroopers. Emerie is talking nonsense here. She doesn't have the ability to just make all of this go away. This is when things begin to fall apart, when she begins making mistakes, when she begins making promises that she can't really keep, when she starts taking actions that are actually contradictory to her previous actions. She's confused. This is a crisis of faith. And that is the state of Emerie's mind as Dr. Royce Hemlock brings her deeper into the organization and gives her more of a role in Project Necromancer. And when Emerie is brought to this program, to her surprise, she finds 3 Force-sensitive children being held captive against their will in the heart of Mount Tantiss.
Why children? Are there not adults that could serve this purpose?
There are few adults left with such characteristics.
It becomes very clear that all these children want to leave, and it becomes increasingly heartbreaking for Emerie to just sit there and watch them suffer. When one of the subjects attempts to break free, he's stunned by the clone commandos, despite Emerie's protest.
Don't!
The other children are obviously terrified by what they witnessed, and Emerie tries to comfort one of them by promising her that no further punishment would happen to the boy.
He'll be fine.
He's not going to be in trouble, is he?
No, he's not in trouble. You can see him tomorrow.
Of course, like we mentioned before, Emerie doesn't have, the ability to control these kind of rules. She doesn't have the ability to keep her promises here.
Where is SP-32?
It provides standard operating procedure for a subject to be isolated for 2 rotations as punishment.
A very stupid and unthinking rule, very similar to the rule that didn't allow Omega to get her Tuca doll. See where I'm going? Unfortunately, the little girl who asked about her friend loses faith in Emerie when she finds out that he's still locked up in punishment.
Eva.
You lied. You said Jax wouldn't be in trouble. He just wanted to go home. We all want to go home.
This is really the last straw for Emerie. As a scientist, as someone who values the scientific method and pursues the truth, despite working for a terrible organization, Emerie is a very honest and truthful person. And it's not just a personality thing, it's a career thing, it's a profession thing. Scientists have to be very disciplined in how they approach things. To find herself being unable to keep her word to this tiny, innocent child is what's opening her eyes to her reality. The agreement that she made with Dr. Hemlock before no longer seems to interest her anymore. And that's because at her core, Emerie is actually a very decent person. And you'll be astonished to find that a lot of terrible organizations like the Empire have plenty of decent people working for them. And that's because a lot of people join causes when they're young. Statistically speaking, activism is most prevalent amongst those under 40. And every movement, well, they're going to sugarcoat their politics to make it more appealing and hide the truth. These movements target young people because when you're really young, you don't really understand your own values. You don't really understand who you are as a person. I mean, even when you get older, it's hard to figure it out. But I remember being in college, surrounded by young adults who might have never been interested in political discourse, but had their worldviews completely shaped by 1 or 2 professors. The only problem is until you pursue these political ideologies in the real world, you don't really know how it will affect you, how you will find yourself within that system, and whether you actually support it or not. And that's basically who Emerie Carr was. She woke up in a fucking terrible organization that she wanted no part in. And we can't fault her for initially wanting to belong, to have a purpose and a place in the world. It's a basic human desire. What we can judge her on, however, is how she acted once she started realizing just how messed up the Empire was. And I think Emerie Carr will help these children. She'll probably help Omega escape eventually as well. It's only inevitable. This is who she is as a person. And this is how most people are in my experience as well. Not necessarily naturally good, but I think most people want to be good. And if they're given the opportunity to be good, they'll take it. The only problem is throughout history, tyrants like Palpatine and their underlings like Dr. Hemlock try to isolate us, make us feel foolish and alone, that we can't achieve anything meaningful by ourselves. They laugh cynically at goodness, at morality, at people who actually try to do something positive with their lives. I mean, you see this all over the internet right now, this type of cynicism, this darkness, this hatred and anger and just like pessimism. There's actually no truth to it at all. If you were disconnected to the news cycle, you would find yourself in 2024 in one of the most advanced stages of human civilization. So why do people do this? Why do people lie on the internet, try to make the world seem like a darker and more dangerous place than it actually is? A lot of times it's because they're trying to cover their own asses, their own terrible behavior, to excuse it as just something that everyone else does when it clearly doesn't have to be and is not in a lot of parts of the world. Let the story of Emerie Carr be a warning and inspiration for everyone. We all matter, and it's never too late to come back to the light and stand up and fight for the right things. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, the democracy. I'll see you next time.